Welcome to part 2 of Loss, Grief and Pain in Schools. If you haven't listened to part 1, please find it on YouTube and join us as we now think of ways we can help children in loss. Four things. First, a listening ear. They need someone who's willing to listen to them. Secondly, they need information. They need the truth. And often we can help them to find the truth. We may not know the truth, but we can help them to find the truth, to put the story together to make sense for themselves. Thirdly, we need companionship. We need someone to remember. And it's easy to do that in the first few weeks, but it's much harder as the months go by. And it's even more harder in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time, when perhaps we might not really be fully aware of the issues this pupil is carrying right into their A-level period. And finally, they need space to be themselves. Some people want to talk, others don't want to talk about it at all. They have to have the space to deal with the issue in a way that's appropriate for them, in which they're the expert of their decisions. And part of this as a teacher is to be observant. It was Plato who said you can discover more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation. And actually that's the approach we use in child bereavement charities, in which we seek to build self-esteem, help them to make sense of their story, their memories, so that they end up with positive memories and learn to live with the painful ones. That's about expressing feelings and emotions. It's about recognizing change and beginning to look forward and seeing how they can move forward. And it's also about helping them to celebrate, to experience good endings, because some children only ever seem to have painful endings. I used to run bereavement groups in particularly primary schools, and well, I'll show you some of the things that we used to do. We'd often start by making a birth certificate, actually, because usually no one's been damaged by that stage. And children were incredibly creative with how they understood their own birth certificate. And we'd use that to just begin to help them to form their own identity about who they are, what makes them unique, and what makes them special. I particularly like this one because a birth certificate is actually you. And we then get them to perhaps draw themselves and express aspects of their life, the things they did, the people in their lives, what they enjoyed, what they didn't enjoy, their favourite foods, their best friends, really understanding their own narrative, their own story, beginning to put together their own story in a way that they can make sense of it. And then we'd look at their life journey, whether it's a train journey or a car journey or like a jigsaw, where they'd start telling the story. Most of this is done on the floor with drawings. But they begin to tell the story of their pain. And of course, sometimes they have huge losses of gaps where they just don't have the knowledge to fill the gap. Adults have a habit of keeping secrets from children to protect them. The reality on the whole, children need the truth. We know that children grieve appropriately for their age. So a 5-year-old will cope with grief like a 5-year-old, and the answers that they get will be taken on board as a 5-year-old. It doesn't mean, of course, that when they reach 12, those answers are sufficient. They may need to ask the same question again when they're 12, when they're 14, when they're 16. They need to keep on working on the questions so that they get the answers that are adequate for them at their particular educational development. This requires children an opportunity of whatever age to be able to express their feelings in a safe, secure way and to express what's going on in their lives. This particular picture of an 11-year-old who was anorexic, actually, and he was expressing how he was the boy falling from the tree. That's how it felt, but he actually wanted to be at the top of the tree. He began to express his feelings with drawings, of the emotions within him. And children would express their anger in safe ways using paper aeroplanes or spinning tops to express how they were feeling at that particular period. Sometimes we'd help them to write letters about their grief. And these would include things like a chance to say sorry, a chance to forgive, expressing significant emotional memories, fond memories, and also a chance to say goodbye and thank you. Children also need to be given an opportunity of recognising who is actually there for them now. Who can they turn to? That might be you, of course. Usually, there's a range of people who are offering support to children, and they don't always recognise it or see it. We also need to help them to see a lot of the positive things that's still happening in their lives, that they can begin to build up a sense of appreciation of the good things of everyday life. I would often use narrative therapy, storytelling with children. Wallace and Gromit is a good example of that, because Wallace always had a helper, didn't he? And Gromit who helped him. And there was always a problem, of course, or a headache to overcome. Working out problems in other people's stories, like Wallace and Gromit, can help children actually to reflect upon their own story, to work out who's there to help them, and to recognise that sometimes we have to try and try and try again till we find an answer or solution that's adequate for us. Here's an example of a child who, in a creative way, was trying to express what was going on inside him. He'd been off school for some time, he was anorexic, he'd lost his friends, he had no social contact except the family. I never talked to him about anorexia, but I did talk to him about what was going on inside him. And he was into model making. So he drew this creature on the left there. And I said, "Oh, what's it called?" And he instantly said it was Toriki Lokob, which I think was carrots and broccoli spelled backwards. And he said it so quickly. This was the beast inside him. And we talked about how that the model that he created, how it was affecting him and speaking to him. And we thought, well, you need a helper, like Wallace and Gromit, who will help you. And then he went and created a different model, the one on the right. And he called him Fire, who would eat up Toriki Lokob. One area we can often shy away from, and might think it's just the chaplain's job, is to actually be open to talk about issues around faith. I'm always sad that some bereavement charities struggle to face this. They say, "Oh, it's religion, we can't engage in it." But the children are engaged in it. The children are asking questions. Where is the deceased? Will I see the deceased? Will I see Mum again? Can Mum see me? Will she see me having my first period? What about if I have my first boyfriend? Will my mum or dad know? These are mega questions in which I do not have any of the answers. I don't need to know the answers. I just need to journey with a child, a teenager, to help them to find an answer that is appropriate for them at their particular age. So whether you're religious or not, don't shy away from helping a child to express what they're thinking and feeling. Don't feel you have to answer anything, but you can be there alongside them to help them to think through the answers that's appropriate for them. So what am I finally saying? The wonderful thing about supporting bereaved children or children with loss is that you don't have to have any answers. You do have to be willing, but to be committed to listening and to empathising, to journeying, to remembering, and to supporting a child to work through their issues so that they might still blossom in this world. There's an expression that grief tears a hole in the fabric of the world, and we spend the rest of our lives trying to mend the tear. Well, it's quite a journey, but anything we do to be alongside a young person as they continue to stitch and formulate a view of the world which is healthy for them to continue to blossom has to be a good thing. And finally, just to say, We have to look after ourselves if we're going to engage in this kind of supporting of children. So my simple question to you is, you know what goes into a first aid box? We have them scattered around the school. You know where to go to if you have a physical injury. But what do you do if it's an emotional injury? How do you handle your emotions? If you're going to support children in this kind of way, you have to have a support structure around you so that you know how to handle your own emotions from this. After all, we want the child to blossom, but we want to blossom ourselves. Thanks for listening. Do stop me and ask me anytime about the subject. Thanks a lot.